September 12th, 2017, Everett Public School Board of Directors regular meeting. I would like to start by welcoming our new student representative to her first meeting tonight. Welcome, Hunter. We look forward to having you on board, and I'm sure Druvik is going to be able, as our senior, well, in more ways than one, board representative, offer some probably great advice along the way. So with that, sorry, darn it. With that, we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the secretary please call the roll?
President Mason.
Present.
Vice President Andrews.
Present.
Director Lassane.
Present.
Director Mitchell.
Present.
Director Wenta. Student Representative Parikh.
Present.
Student Representative Pollock.
Present.
Thank you. That takes us to the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Cohen, would you please introduce tonight's agenda?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Consistent with the plans established at your 2017 Summer Planning Workshop, tonight's agenda contains several elements related to both the district's strategic plan and the board's annual goals. There's a segment for routine business this evening. There is a segment for strategic progress reporting, a segment for information items, one for new business, one for upcoming agenda items, and a segment for board comments. In addition, I have a special note for this evening's meeting. Tonight, the school board will hold a public hearing to receive testimony and consider whether to authorize eminent domain proceedings to acquire real property for a future high school. During this public hearing, the board invites and will allow only property owners and tenants of the specific properties involved in this hearing and those with legal interest in these properties to provide testimony during the actual public hearing. That's agenda item 1301 for resolution 1159. All others requesting to provide public comments about this or any other topic tonight will follow policy 1441, and if eligible under the policy, be called to provide public comments during one of the two regular public comment periods during this regular meeting of the Board of Directors. Since publishing the agenda to you last week, the following changes have been made. Item 17.2, personnel report, was revised to include an additional retiree. Item 7.3, approval of vouchers, was revised to correct a publication error. Item 17.8, approval of minimum basic education requirement compliance report, was revised to include the data upon which the verification is based, which could not be completed until the fourth day enrollment count taken by the schools yesterday, which is somewhat typical since OSPI moved up the verification time for the board. Item 8.1, the superintendent's report will be updated during the meeting as is customary for regular meetings. Item 13.1, adoption of resolution 1159, authorization to acquire property by eminent domain was amended to add a page that lists properties purchased since 1990. The document was uploaded today. Item 13.2, policy 1441, audience participation, was revised to include estimated time for the agenda item. The board may elect to, well, I should add a personal note. As you know, Debbie and Darlene were gone last week at a conference, and Diane and I did the board agenda. I did the final review, and those are all my problems. So the board may, of course, elect to change the order of business by a majority vote of the members. Please note again, this is not the point in the agenda to request items be removed from your consent agenda. In all other respects, the agenda as it was originally published to you, and we ask your approval thereof.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Director Mitchell and seconded by Director Lassane to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion regarding the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, no. Motion carries. That brings us to recognition, and this evening we do not have any items of recognition, so we will move to the consent agenda, or our first public comment period. Dr. Cohn, do we have any requests for comments this evening?
There are no requests from the audience for public comments.
Okay. Then we'll move to our consent agenda. May you please introduce the consent agenda for this evening?
Yes, ma'am. The board's consent agenda includes repetitive business items. These include, for example, meeting minutes, personnel actions, expense vouchers, and recurring contracts. Sometimes the consent agenda will include items that occur less frequently but are of a routine business nature. The less frequently occurring consent agenda items are usually reviewed by the board in its Friday report, 1 or more weeks before the board meeting when those items are scheduled to appear on the consent agenda. This gives directors time to ask staff questions about those items or to consider discussion about the policy implication of those items. If a consent agenda item is removed by the concurrence of 2 directors, we place that item in new business, and then we automatically renumber the remaining items for your action. The board votes on the consent agenda as a single motion, and consent agendas are not by their nature debatable. In the case of this consent agenda, the superintendent's office has received no questions or comments regarding any of the items. Therefore, the consent agenda is presented as published for your approval.
Thank you. There is a motion to adopt the consent agenda is in order.
So moved.
There a second, please?
Second.
It's been moved by Director Mitchell and seconded by Director Andrews. Does any director wish to remove an item from the consent agenda and place it in new business section of the agenda? Hearing no requests, we will proceed to the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The motion carries. Which brings us to the superintendent report. What's the news this week?
Well, that's an excellent, excellent question. And as soon as I can get this computer to...
Looks a little frozen.
Yes, it does look a little frozen, doesn't it? Tell you what. Oh, there we go. Oh, almost had it. Here we go. Give this a try. How's that? There we go. Excellent.
Very cute.
The superintendent's report. So tonight we received some wonderful first day photos. I should say news about our first day and photos of the first several days from a number of families over social media. This one happens to be near and dear to my heart. This is a photo of the Nelson family youngsters. Alice, who's in 3rd grade, Samuel, who's in 5th grade, and Lewis, who started his first day of kindergarten this past week. Yes, they're, as you can tell, all smiles, and according to Mom, they're looking forward to a great school year. Both Mom and Dad are teachers in the district and are delighted that we decided to use the pictures of their youngsters. If you don't know these kids, they're absolutely fabulous. Like all the other 20,000, but they're super fabulous kids. A couple of pieces of good news. Our food service staff, 2 of our food nutrition services staff members, were honored at the 2017 Washington School Nutrition Association Annual Conference. Angie Kessel, our kitchen manager at Silver Firs Elementary, received a Golden Apple Award for demonstrating outstanding leadership and professionalism. Leanne Malus, our food services staff member at Hawthorne Elementary, received the Apple Blossom Award, and this was for demonstrating leadership, enthusiasm, and dedication to the school meals program, and we want to make sure that we take a moment and congratulate them on their awards. Schools have, of course, some really outstanding first days. I don't know if you had a chance to be at many schools. I know Director Mason was at Everett High this morning with Director Lassane and myself. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but I'll tell you, I am absolutely delighted to report that we had an incredible day one. While no day one is flawless, I will tell you that this is the 3rd time in a row that I can share with you that it was less flawed than the previous years and went incredibly well. And I want to thank all the folks who helped make that happen. We really did a tremendous amount of worked to make sure that everybody had an excellent start. I think I was able to visit 5 or 6 schools on the first day, and I think added about 4 or 5 schools later in the week. And I'll tell you what, I walked on to first I drove by the Everett High School campus and didn't see anybody there. And I know it was a silly thought, but the thought crossed my mind, oh my gosh, did they do a late start and forget to tell me? And then I walked into the main building, and the halls were absolutely completely empty. There were 3 or 4 students at a table to make some schedule changes. Everybody else was in class very first morning of school. No lines to get schedules fixed. No kids waiting to get registered. None of that was going on. Everybody was in class getting to it. I have to tell you, that was the case in every one of the schools I visited. We have to thank our transportation folks. We have to thank our grounds folks. We have to thank the folks who take care of the equipment in the buildings, the custodians who did so much work to have all of the schools really show ready when the year started. Transportation shared with me that they're running 137 routes this year. They're transporting 12,551 students, a total of 12,700 miles this year as we started the year. Our preliminary enrollment, our day 4 enrollment was 9,648 at elementary, 4,618 at middle, 5,444 at high. Overall, 19,710 on our first count date. October 1, we expect that to rise to 19,840, approximately 100 more than last year. We had expected that we would rise a bit more than that, but the fact that we've closed all but 1 elementary school, 2 of the 3 high schools, comprehensive high schools, and 3 of the middle schools means that we probably lost a little bit of what we would typically see in the way of numbers, because we ended up telling some students, I'm sorry, you got to go back to your home schools and your home district. We're just too full. We're just too darn full. So I'm delighted with the numbers. And by the way, preschool looks right now to be 197. So if you add about 200 to the 19,700, we're just shy of 20,000 students, and we'll be over 20,000 students, including preschool, by the time the October 1 count rolls around. And I think that's substantive news for you all. Today, we started the rollout in 5 of our schools. We distributed devices to implement the one-to-one computer-to-student platform. This happens to be a picture of Caroline at Everett High School, I believe, where we were deploying the computing devices through the English classes. I think I was able to see about 5 English classes while I was there this morning. I think you can see the thumbs up from the students. I have to tell you, I think we've been working on this project for over 3 years, easily, this particular project and this particular design. Voters provided us the support in the 2016 bond, and we are now at the point where all of that equipment for the first round is being rolled out. Remember, it's a 6-year levy, so you don't do it all at once. You do it over time. I think we're rolling out this phase. We're rolling out 700 devices, or we rolled out 700 devices today, I should say, at Everett High, or at a combination of the schools. I just asked how many devices today, and I was told 700. So this is a significant undertaking. I want to thank our learning and information technology team. Brian Beckley's team has just been doing remarkable work. So Everett High School, Sequoia High School are the first secondary schools, and then Lowell, Garfield, and Monroe Elementary Schools are the first elementary schools. Remember, they are moving to a cart base, so the classrooms will all have carts, so the students will have one-to-one in the schools. Elementary kids aren't taking them home. The secondary kids they're being checked out to be able to take home. So I think you probably have seen this particular chart as we move on to another topic. We just were able to calculate our status. This is last year's status. You'll notice that this little grid shows that all of our grade levels for all of the state assessments across those grade levels, we're above the state pass rate. Now, some people use the term average, but these data are not averages. The test results aren't averages. They're percentages of students who reach standard. So this chart is how we typically display very quickly in a sort of a dashboard style, if you will, the percentage above the state pass rate that our students reached. So in 2016, 7% more kids in third grade met or exceeded standard on the ELA than the percentage of kids across the state. So we sort of compare ourselves to the state, okay? So you'll notice that in this, there are 17 cells, and there are 7 that are in double digits or above. And you'll notice in the next slide that there are 11 cells that are above, and that are above, that are double digits above the state. So you'll notice very quickly that there are more of the cells above the state pass rates, met standard rates, I should say it that way, met or exceeded standards rates. And in those cases where we were not above, where we did not increase our distance above, the changes are 0.1, 0.2, 0.2, 0.3, 0.7, and 0.8. So we're improving in almost all cases, and we're looking very much forward to the analysis that Greg Lobdell will provide you next week when he comes from the Center for Education Effectiveness to review that information with you. And then Catherine Matthews, the following meeting, will provide you the internal analysis of student performance. So that's particularly good news. Key maintenance projects have been completed or are making great progress. The Gateway Middle School project, the contractors reached substantial completion, and they're working to finish the final details of the roofing material replacement and the HVAC, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems upgrades. Fire alarm panels were replaced at Penny Creek Elementary and Heatherwood Middle. Those were completed over the summer. We're beginning the safety and security access control systems pilot at Hawthorne and Silver Firs Elementaries. You'll remember the original plan, we went to bid, and the bid amount, the one bid that came in, was so far above the estimates, we decided that we couldn't go forward with that. We needed to rethink how we were going about it. So we're doing these 2 pilots, and this will provide a card reader and video intercom systems at the main entry. So we're going to see how that works for the year and see whether that's the route we should take. This, of course, is the result of a very booming construction trade, and a lot of projects are coming in above bid. Not every project, however, so let's celebrate that the bids for the Memorial Stadium baseball field replacement came in under bid. The architect's estimate was $1.25 million, and the bid was $1.02 million. We're very, very pleased. That's the contractor that's doing the work at Jackson, which will probably be the first of the 4, I think, field replacements or repairs that we're going to be completing. Progress continues on Elementary 18. Recently, the land development activity and building permit application were submitted to Snohomish County, so we're making progress on that front as well. School visits during the month of August included 2 of the high schools and 3 of the middle schools, in several cases multiple times due to the Leadership Institutes, a number of the training activities and welcomes for a number of groups like the maintenance staff, the custodial staff, transportation staff, in a number of those settings. So that's the superintendent's report for this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Lots of good information and good news happening. Now, we will move to strategic progress monitoring, and tonight we get to learn about professional development systems, and I believe Dr. Joyce Stewart and Debbie Kovacs are going to walk us through this.
So good afternoon. Debbie and I are excited to present this great work that all of us have been involved in this last year. And so I'm going to start out, I like starting out with a picture or a quote. So if you take a look at that picture was taken on August 1st. We launched our superintendent's leadership team by hearing from future graduates. So there are some of the students you can see way in the back there, first graders all the way up to students who are graduating. So they shared what they needed from our leaders. So I'm going to share some of what we heard. So we heard that we need to hire the very, very best teachers, that we need adults who understand anxiety, depression, and social-emotional struggles. We need teachers who appreciate differences. We need teachers who will teach us how to critically think about current issues in our society. We want teachers who are going to challenge us in math, use updated technology, believe we can do more. We need teachers who are really concerned about our safety. support us when we struggle, and we need to be surrounded with happy and fun people. So after they finished sharing, I thought about what they said. Hire the best, understand social-emotional issues, learn about critical thinking, care about safety, challenge us in math, use updated technology, and care about our happiness. So thinking about this, how do we meet all those needs? So we meet them by truly hiring the very best and ensuring that these employees are engaged, not just having the opportunity, but are truly engaged and fully participating in adult learning. And that's what this presentation is all about tonight. It's about adult learning in our professional development system. So tonight, what we're going to do as a team is we're going to review what are the main components of the system, especially the priorities that are aligned with the AOP and our strategic plan. We're going to show you the themes of our professional development offerings. You're going to hear some good news about the substitute shortage struggle that we had last year. We're going to provide you evidence that we are constantly looking at our onboarding processes and strengthening those. And then we're going to present, we have learning institutes throughout our district now for both classified and certificated staff members, and you're going to hear some of those highlights. We're going to talk to you about how we still continue our maintenance learning sessions. And you might think that's about the maintenance department. No, that's about work that we've been doing over time and how do we maintain that professional development. So for example, Everett or GLAD, we continually have those sessions and how we're continuing to strengthen those. And then just give you examples of how do we measure the effectiveness. So many different areas, and I think Debbie's going to do that part. And then underscore also something new you're going to hear tonight is about working collaboratively, doing community service projects and strengthening partnerships that way. And then talk about what are the priorities this year and then explain next steps. So thinking about the professional development system, there are many components. So I want to talk through with some of those components. So it's based on each fall we give a comprehensive needs assessment to both our classified and certificated staff members. And then our professional development council, they look at that assessment and look for what are the trends, what are the themes. We also take a look and we always make sure we address our district priorities on our professional development calendar. So for example, right now, Cascade High School, Jackson High School, and 3 elementaries, they're going to be having subs 3 times a year to come and learn from Jeff Utek's team. So we make sure that they're scheduled first, and then what are the other priorities that are scheduled next, and that's how we schedule the subs throughout the year. So we address those priorities first. Then we vet this through the Professional Development Council. So for today, for example, today we have October 13th is a Learning Improvement Day. So today all the Professional Development Council members from last year, because I'm going to be changing some, but they started this work last year, got to received all the offerings that are going to happen on October 13th to give input. So they gave suggestions. Now they get to look at the day, provide input before we finalize it. And then you're going to hear how we integrate feedback into almost all of our sessions. So we ask the participants to give us feedback. You're going to hear about a new Classified Learning Institute we launched this year. And then just our focus on engagement and impact. And then just hearing the many different ways that our professional development is offered. And then more than ever, we're trying to integrate choice into our sessions.
Okay, as Joyce mentioned, she had kind of an overarching review of the 2016-17 priorities, and we're going to delve into more specifically the technology, elementary literacy, TPEP, social emotional learning, some discussion about onboarding, certificated and classified aligned institutes, deeper partnerships, and share about the equity that is integrated in all of the professional development, and then talk about the 21st century skill definitions and rubrics. And as Joyce mentioned, we do have those offerings that are focused on our strategic priorities, but then we have our ongoing work and maintenance. And a couple of the examples are strengthening content units, early learning, school improvement, and advanced placement. You'll hear about that. So as we talk about substitute management, this is just a good example of 1 month at a glance. It shows the number of offerings that we have, particularly in October, and then we try to focus working collaboratively with teaching and learning and with the HR department on the priorities. Technology and TPIP are first priorities, and then we work our way through the other offerings. And we know that we hire our teachers to be in the classroom, and we know it's a dance to provide the professional development they need, but yet have them in the classroom where we need to have them teaching our students. So again, it's a real collaborative effort with teaching and learning, with the continuous monitoring of the PD offerings, making adjustments based on substitute availability and the history of fill rates throughout the school year. And I have to give a big shout out and thank you to Diana Biggs in teaching and learning and Deborah Wisniewski in our substitute office. They really are the ones who work the numbers and make it happen and provide us with those substitutes. From, looking at the maximums that we have each day that we can have out, we had it up to 50 at one point. We've had to reduce it to 30 in order to make sure that we provide coverage for that, to actually thinking in advance for this year to secure substitutes for our mentor-mentee program so that we can make sure that we comply with our collective bargaining agreement and ensure they get the training that we promised they would get. And this is a slide that I'm proud of because it shows that we had significant gains in filling our substitutes vacancies based on the fact that you increased, one of the primary reasons is based on the fact that you increased the sub rate. That had a huge impact on our ability to fill when our teachers had to be away for training. So we experienced a significant increase in fill rates immediately following the January 2017 implementation date compared to a year prior. So on an average, over that same time period, we were filling at 95.7%, and after the increase, we were filling at 97.6%. So again, thank you so much for that support. And in addition to this, while we were able to demonstrate an increase in fill rates, at that same time, we were experiencing a significant increase in absences at 4.8%, as well as the demands of providing the Jeff Utech training. So again, with all of that, we were still able to increase our fill rates. So we were really pleased about that.
So as I mentioned, we have a professional development council that guides all this work. And what they do is, like I said earlier, they review the surveys, they look for trends, and then they vet all the summer PD and district-wide learning improvement days. So if you take a look at this slide, you can see we have both classified, certificated, administrative staff on there, and then invited 2 parents to participate last year. So you can see from this graph that the offerings range from about 150 to 180 per month. And September, you might ask why September is low. September is a month we try not to release our teachers. We try to really have the teachers in the classroom making connections with students, unless it's a required training. And then if you take a look, December, SBA, and April, we try not to have teachers out of their classrooms there in that month. And then the small number of release in June. So this slide shows the topic groupings of the sessions, but I also want you to remember that there are some topics that this last year we said we really need to integrate them into all of our professional development. So for an example of that is equity. We ask our administrators and teachers, leaders and directors, curriculum specialists, facilitators to integrate that into their leadership team meetings. In addition, remember, the delivery varies from many of these different sessions, so some of them could be a book study. And also there are many collaborative meetings that happen during the school year that are not entered into the ERO system. For example, the social emotional meetings that all happened throughout all of our elementaries and middle schools last year are not in this system, but it might be something we might want to consider this next year. So you can see here that the end of June and the month of August are the ideal times for adult learning in our school district. It seems like staff members are more present and refreshed. So that's been a trend for a number of years in our school district. Here you see just the various topics that were addressed during the summer months. And again, look at the technology. That came through in the survey. That has been definitely of interest in both our classified and certificated groups. So this slide highlights the professional development that was focused on the integration of technology. So it's one slide, or 3 or 4 pictures and a graph. And I just want to stop here because I want you to imagine all the planning that went in to make this happen and make the implementation happen all the way up to today. But look at the results. The very first year, we had some very nervous and anxious teachers, and you can see that Jeff Utek's group did a great job of just really focusing with them on, it's going to be okay, just walk alongside of us. We're going to help introduce this work from you. So isn't this what we really heard from our students when what they said to us on August 1st? And imagine just passing out those devices. Some of you were here today, and not having our teachers have their devices first, not having them go through this rich professional development that we had with their colleagues. So just think about, this is all happening, and the excitement today, but still teachers are nervous. But just imagine if those devices would have arrived at our high schools today and just been unloaded and said, here you are. So anyway, I'm spending a little more time on this slide than I probably should, but I want you to know that this was all about planning, a shared leadership group that put this together, and it's just an example of what happens when we all work together. Well, this was all happening. Technology got a lot of attention, but Peter's team was leading the elementary literacy adoption. And again, we heard from the students on August 1st that we want our teachers to help us critically evaluate current issues, and I believe these instructional materials are relevant and aligned to our current rigorous standards. So here, you've seen this a lot over the last several years, but I want to bring it up again to let you know that TPEP is still alive and well in our district and is becoming part of our learning culture, and this is now going to move to maintenance because this is integrated into the professional development system, and we have a system for how we onboard new teachers, but still have our principals learning alongside the teachers. Again, you can see we have a great team doing the training, and again, the ratings are above 4, I think, in every single case. Well, congratulations. After several years, we now have 21st century skills definitions and rubrics. So principals will be receiving training in October. Dr. Scott's going to lead that so that they're able to lead this work with their teachers. And then some of the work we are most proud of is the implementation of the OTG meetings and how we are addressed. We just took this on the spring before and said we're going to do this. And our teachers and our principals really did a great job of stopping, looking at the hearts of our kids. And I observed a really powerful piece of this work when the principals got together this summer and they were sharing some of their observations from these meetings. And then also at one of the lid days, I was at Lowell Elementary, and they had a spreadsheet with their students. They had all their data, their SBA data, but they also had integrated everything they learned about the kids from their previous teacher and transitioned it over to the new teacher. So that's what we want. We want our elementary principals sharing with the middle school sharing with the high school, and the teachers sharing with one another. And that's work that needs to continue, but at least we've launched it.
Okay, onboarding. We have many onboarding opportunities, but specifically I'd like to talk about the new administrator induction. It's a 2-day process where new administrators learn the Everett way, from the nuts and bolts of district systems to overviews of the TPEP and instructional programs and materials. The bus tour is always a huge success. It's enjoyed by all, and they get to see a snapshot of the different buildings, elementary, middle, and high school. We continue to get positive feedback on that. The new higher learning offerings, this demonstrates we offer a wide range of trainings to new hires throughout the year, ranging from district curriculum and deep learning to understanding how to use Google Forms and Office 365. So again, the technology piece is alive and well. These offerings are in support of the Teacher Mentor-Mentee program and are led by Lorraine Marks and Lois Craig, who we are sad to have, she's now retired. She deserves it. Did a fantastic job of coordinating the offerings and providing much of the training. And then we have in addition to the large new teacher orientation in August, We also offer a new teacher orientation in the mid-year to capture those late hires. And again, Lorraine and Lois work closely with Dr. Lancaster in teaching and learning and Rondi Seberg in human resources to coordinate and provide the training.
So earlier I mentioned the Learning Institutes, and we are really, really proud of our Learning Institute, especially with the expansion to various groups. So here you see in this picture, this is our second year of having our maintenance and grounds employees meet, and I believe this happened at the end of January. So again, these sessions are aligned with other, first they're based on input from members who are on the Professional Development Council, their survey results, and then their sessions are aligned with other PD throughout the district and district priorities. The leadership team was very, very fortunate to learn from a former Disney leadership trainer who works with Fortune 500 companies, and as a result of this training, first of all, we all read a book together, but each department in school are writing service philosophies and choosing service standards. This next slide was an experience for all of us. So this is a slide where our team participated in a poverty simulation facilitated by about 30 community members. And in addition to teaching us about the community resources, we experienced what it was like to live some of the lives of our students and their families. So you can see the deep engagement here. This is a new experience for all of us. We spent about 3 hours, I think, at Jackson High School on the afternoon of August 1st. This was our 7th year of doing community service together, and you might ask, why did we put this in here? Because there's so much learning that goes on when we were working alongside our community. So the leadership team members get to sign up. We have a menu of options. Again, they get to sign up, and it's amazing if you go from one place to the next, whether it's at a church serving the homeless or whether you're working at the Boys and Girls Club, you're working alongside some of the students at the Boys and Girls Club, but also a lot of the employees. And you're learning all the different services that are in our community. I think one of these, they're at the Assistance League, and they are definitely great partners with us. One of the highlights of the summer was definitely having Rick Wormley here. He is just this highly respected author and practitioner, and here was a man who, aside from lunch, had over 150 people at Evergreen's cafeteria and had everyone's attention for, you can imagine, 6 hours, everyone. It was absolutely an amazing experience. And then the next slide talks about that we spend a day together still because there's a lot of operational topics that we need to address. So here you see teams that Dr. Matthews had an activity she had put together, working together, having fun, but they're looking at their SBA data and discussing their strengths, their patterns, and struggles. And then during this one, you've heard us use the phrase, for example, authentic learning experience. Well, Myron Dweck, this is his 3rd year of being here, and he was the person who introduced that phrase to us, and he's really helped us understand of how do we use this device to access authentic, genuine, real learning experience. And he continually with us emphasizes equity. He says this is truly about removing a barrier so all students can access authentic learning experiences. So he was back. And again, if you look at the bottom, you're going to see, hopefully, there's always this theme of getting feedback so that how do we get better? But especially in our evaluations, we're asking, was this relevant? Was it engaging? But most of all, you don't see it here, but we ask them, what are you going to do as an educator as a result of attending this training? It's like, so what, now what? So again, look at those feedback ratings, again, well above 4. And then this is our 2nd year. We launched last year a partnership with our North Region neighborhood groups, and then this last year, Mr. Fleckenstein, Dr. Lancaster launched a luncheon with the principals talking about how can we develop these same partnerships with maybe homeowners associations in the Central and South regions. So they have launched that work, and that will continue throughout the year. This is an example of August the 2nd. This is our 3rd meeting together now with the neighborhood councils, and what they're doing is talking about what went really well last year, what didn't go well, because we had some of that too, and then what's our plan for this next year to work together and do activities together that will truly impact our students and their families' lives. Dr. Lancaster did an amazing job of leading training with our new hires. And again, here's just another example of how we are strengthening our onboarding processes. And she did a great job, again, of getting feedback, giving that feedback to our principals and assistant principals, getting the feedback to the presenters. What can we do better? So again, that feedback is continually integrated into everything that we do. This is probably another piece that I'm just really proud to present. For the first time ever, based on our paraeducators, they've been saying, we want a learning institute, sort of like, what about us? And we had our very first institute this summer at Evergreen Middle School, and absolutely an amazing response from them. So we're going to continue to do this. And the sessions were based on what they wanted. We started out planning this, some of us, and it was more, they came back and looked at it and said, nope, that's not exactly everything we want. We want some other offerings here. So we had to scramble a little bit in early summer and make some adjustments because the two people on the council said, no, this isn't what we heard from our team members that they want at this institute. So great success again, and we'll continue to enhance this.
Okay, and this is the maintenance, and again, not maintenance as in the grounds. We're just a couple of examples. As Joyce mentioned, it's part of our culture, and we continue to our work to advance it. So advanced placement institutes, we had Everett participants and out-of-district participants, and in the past, we have sent our teachers to Bellevue to receive the training, but now Everett hosts it and then invites other districts to join us. And again, the Early Learning Institute with 70 learning sessions, again, just demonstrating our ongoing maintenance of our work.
So how do we measure the effectiveness of our professional development? Hopefully you heard a lot of this tonight when we talked about always asking for feedback. We have session evaluations. Dr. Cohn introduced all of us to that when he became superintendent here, making sure we're always stopping and asking in different ways, how do we do? Whether it's those onboarding processes or whether it's just a simple learning session. Improved teacher practice, we see that through the TPEP process. Evidence that supports students are achieving. I'm going to show you some results on the next slide. And just our formal and informal classroom observations. Observation of student work, results of both summative and formative assessments. Something that we didn't highlight in here that I wish I would have now, the weekly staff newsletters. I wish you could see the staff newsletters. It's one of the highlights of our week is looking at those on Sunday night and providing feedback, where the principals have really integrated this professional learning into their staff newsletters. And then, of course, asking students what they are learning, getting their feedback, and then just assessment results over time. So if you take a look at this slide right here, this slide's all over, but you just really have to think about this. This is a result of the adult learning, the different topics we talked about that really addresses that first goal in our strategic plan about getting 100% of our students to graduate college, career, and life ready. So here's an example, and take a look at the county results, the state results. So we are very proud of this slide. And then again here, Dr. Cohn introduced, this was last year, but you got to see this year. And one of the advantages of being a senior citizen on this team, I've been here a long time, and I can look at this and pretty much tell you why we have the results we have in ELA over time. I can tell you the history of what happened here when we had 3-period block of social studies, literacy, and reading, and there was a lot of one thing going on but not the other two, and we said we need 2 blocks of just literacy. And that sounds really easy. It wasn't easy to do, but we did it. And then we were getting results, and then people said, well, let's just get down to 1. Our kids are doing well, and we argued. So no, our kids are doing well. That's working. Let's continue. And then you add these rich instructional materials. You add collaboration time. You get networking of teachers throughout districts, and you get double-digit gains. There's an example. Same thing with science. I remember as a principal, Brian Day coming in and introducing OEL and the kits and learning alongside teachers and bringing those teacher teams together. That's how we get double-digit numbers. And we're going to do the same thing with math. You're going to hear from Dr. Scott here in a couple weeks. Our plan to have exactly that same type of work happening in math. And I just have to advocate for maybe considering having all middle schools have algebra by the time they leave 8th grade. Dr. Scott, what do you think? Thought I'd put that in there. So you got to think as board members, our students are going to be taking that 10th grade SBA math. We want them to approach that with confidence. And it is my opinion that they need to have algebra, geometry, and algebra 2 by the time they take that test. So anyway, that wasn't part of this presentation, but I had to put it in. So then here also you see the advanced placement, the great gains, college and high school. And then I'm going to have Debbie talk about the frontline professional growth.
Yes, so professional development systems, this is where all of this training you just heard about, the repository where we track for all of our staff. We are in the process of, we just purchased a new system, and the name of the company is Frontline, and they were established in 1998, and they serve about 12,000 K-12 organizations nationwide, and of those, 152 are in Washington State, with some of our neighboring districts, Edmonds, North Shore, Renton, Puyallup, and Kent, using some of these components. It will replace our 3 systems that we currently have. So recruiting and hiring is the new system. It will replace the monocular. Professional learning management, otherwise known as PLM, will replace what we have lovingly called ERO. And then absence management will replace our Smart Find. And as you can see up here, it shows what the plan is for the launch. A couple of the key features are that they're integrated, so they're all 3 working together. The data that's within those 3 modules can be uploaded into the different sections. It'll provide profile data sharing among the 3 systems. The biggest piece is that it will upload into our Business Plus system, where we do import and export of data for leave balances, credits and clock hours, and all of our payroll. And it has an onboarding workflow component, and we're hopeful that, we've been told that it has a robust data reporting features, and with that, we are expecting and anticipating that it will enhance our services in human resources. And the timeline is, this is a real rough one, but we will launch our applications in January, and then move into our professional development in June, and then follow up with our absence management in August. So we have quite a busy schedule. Not to mention that Joyce had talked about tracking, would you say social emotional, the meetings at the building. So again, continuous improvement. So as we think about next year, we will continue to look at the technology, implementation of the positive behavior support systems, PBIS, implementation of the elementary literacy program, and service standards will be a focal point for all schools and departments. Certificated and classified learning institutes to include expansion of our office professional offerings as well. And then continued integration of equity with all professional development offerings. Next steps are to conduct comprehensive needs assessment again with our professional development council, and implement the instructional technology training at 5 schools that Gary mentioned earlier. Monitor substitute capacity to support the work, and use feedback to continue to strengthen our offerings, and implement the new frontline professional growth system.
So just in closing, hopefully you learned the key components and the priorities for this last school year. We showed you the themes of the professional development offerings, and then Debbie shared the good news about the substitute shortage that we were struggling with, and then heard about how we're strengthening our onboard processes, especially stopping and getting input. So I'll just give an example. I don't think I shared this, but Dr. Cohn meets with all the new administrators at the end of the year. He has themes. He gets their feedback. We get that feedback. We talk about what did we learn from that feedback, so that's just another example. And then highlighted our learning institutes, especially the new paraeducator one, demonstrated that the maintenance still continues. We gave examples of how we measure the effectiveness, especially those last 2 or 3 slides. And then something new was underscored how engaging in collaborative community service can strengthen partnerships, and then displayed next year's priorities and explained next steps. So it's our hope that you heard the same themes that students shared on August 1st. When they told, those future graduates told us what did they want. They wanted to have updated technology. They wanted teachers who address their social and emotional needs, teachers who help them think critically, who focus on their safety. I didn't mention happy and fun, but I think it's integrated in here somewhere. So anyway, it's my hope that you heard those themes, and just want to thank you so much for hearing and listening to our presentation. Any questions?
Thank you very much. It's not something that I think districts talk a lot about, is professional development. I think everyone realizes it happens, but I don't think they really know how it happens. And when I look at the variety of offerings that we have in our district, at the end of the day, it's a great teacher in every classroom that makes that difference. And I just really, really appreciate all the work that you guys meaning everyone, put into this, because it will make a significant difference. So thank you. With that, do any directors have any questions?
I have a couple questions, if I may.
Please.
First question is, do the other districts within our area pull from the same substitute pool as we do? Or are there some substitutes who would prefer to work with Everett Public Schools over others, and so that's the pool that we pull from?
To answer your first question, yes, we do compete with our neighboring districts, and so that was one of the reasons why we came to you with the recommendation to increase the pay, so that would be incentive for them to choose Everett Public Schools. And to answer your second question, yes, even regardless of pay, we have many substitutes who choose only to work with Everett Public Schools because of the rigor and all of the offerings that we have. So, but we continue to compete. And truly, many of our substitutes we end up hiring as well. So the shortage is still there.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's a good thing. My second question is, what is right response training, and what does that entail?
Becky will give you details.
That is a training for staff who are working with students with behavior needs, and it entails supporting staff members to know how to de-escalate, what preventative strategies are in place, and then recovery strategies after they have worked through an escalation that a student is trying to navigate with their behaviors.
I got you. Thank you very much. Perhaps we should say some of our law enforcement people, no, never mind. Excuse me about that. So thank you very much for the partnership that we are doing with the community services and the neighborhood groups. I think that goes a long way in showing that our education of our students involves the support of a village and support of many people. And that partnership also, we get to learn the strengths and the weaknesses in those different neighborhoods and how best to serve our students. So that's a good thing too. So thank you for that work that you're doing in that area. And as we continue to enhance our offerings of PDs, perhaps we can get to that point in which our students have already taken geometry and algebra 2 by the 10th grade. Because if I were to ask one more question, I might be booed off of the stage. If I were to say, what do we need to get there by you, that would probably be just too much to do right now to ask for, right?
I'll wait to the study session when Dr. Scott has the study session on balanced math.
Sounds good.
Save
Thank
that
you.
question for Dr. Scott.
Thank you.
Director Andrews, any questions?
I did have a great presentation. Thank you very much. It's just amazing to see the adult learning happening in our district. I had a little bit of a disconnect on the fact that with the number of sessions, the highest number of sessions was for school improvement, and yet school improvement is actually listed as a maintenance item. I was also just curious what sort of training that school improvement provides, sessions, excuse me.
So a lot of those sessions are the school improvement sessions that are going on in the schools to develop their school improvement plans. So each school develops a school improvement plan, but they bring teams of teachers in to look at their data and decide what their actions are going to be and how they're going to measure those actions. So they submit all those as clock hours. So there's many, many teams are getting together before, I mean, you see the school improvement plan, but by the time you see it, there's been probably 10 or 12 meetings that have happened prior to that completion of that school improvement plan. Many people vet that, so it becomes a collaborative document.
Okay.
So to clarify then, the professional development, because I had a question about some of the numbers too. You had mentioned some of it's reading or whatnot. So some of it is structured online or in-person learning, and some of it is unstructured but regulated collaborative work for an outcome.
Correct. So
it
for
is-
example, if you came here on a Friday afternoon about 4 o'clock, you'd see Kathy Stillwell working with a group of 7th grade math teachers. That's a professional learning set. She has a purpose objective, of course, but that would be listed under one of these sessions here. So they might be here for the next 4 months on Friday night for 2 or 3 hours, but that's entered for clock hours and approved. There's a system that it has to be approved.
Thank you.
The number of sessions, excuse me, is staggering when you look at total sessions. Yeah, it's very impressive.
Student representatives, do you have any questions this time? Great, well, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Okay, at this time, I believe we've decided to move our break a little bit later in that we can get through a little bit more of our business while we have folks in the audience here. And that's going to take us next to information and discussion. And tonight we are talking about the Washington State School Directors Association Legislative Assembly and positions. Director Mitchell.
Yes, thank you. As your legislative representative, I will be attending the Washington State School Directors Association Legislative Assembly at CTAC, September 22nd and 23rd. You should have all received via email a very lengthy document of all of their strategic priorities for discussion this year. I have some requests of you. Before the 22nd, if you can review this document and provide me feedback in 3 different ways. The first one is if you read through them and find one of particular interest, that you do not like how it's written. If there are any edits, I will propose the edits that are recommended by you all. Because this is not me, this is a representative of everyone. The second request is that WASDA, the legislative committee within WASDA, does put recommendations for passing or not passing some of these priorities. And so if you do not agree with their recommendation, please let me know so that I can follow suit. And then the third one is they also ask at the end of the meeting that I then take all of these and put in what I believe are our top 10, that WASDA then takes all of those top 10s and they come out with their top 3s for the legislative days that we do in the winter. So if you can give me your top 1, 2, or 3, that would be great. So that way, again, I'm reflecting where all of us are. If you can just do that by email, just directly to me, before the 22nd. I had Darlene print this out for me so that as I get emails from you all, I can make notes and get back to you if I have any questions before I go down to the Legislative Assembly. And then I will be missing the September 25th meeting. And so Director Mason, I don't know if you want me to give feedback at the 10:10 meeting on how that assembly went, or just send it in an email that then Gary can pass on to everyone else. So there's just some questions, but I don't think I needed 10 minutes, but if anybody has any questions, please let me know.
Okay, I thought actually this was an opportunity for us to discuss any positions that if directors had any questions or any positions. Do you typically go down there with sort of a general idea of our top 10? Because if I recall, I feel like in the past we've, between the administrative team and the directors, we've sort of come up with a suggested top 10, and then individual directors have an opportunity to sort of weigh in on that in terms of language or potential changes and
I believe
such.
that's done before we go down to Olympia. This meeting, I know we've discussed it in the past, but they provide the documents so late. I personally have not had a chance to look at all of them in detail. So what I did last year and the previous year is take our strategic priorities. What are our focuses? ELA, math, graduation, social, emotional, and look through them and know what our discussions are. But if any director has, that's why I was trying to give 2 weeks. But if there is any director has had a chance to review them, I'm more than willing to take feedback today.
Okay.
And my top 10 are just for WASDA, like what I nominate, that's where it is. It's just for what WASDA's top 10 are going to be, not what our top 10 are going to be.
Right.
And so again, I take our strategic goals to mirror that to what WASDA's top 10 should be.
Well, I did notice on a lot of the new ones that there seems to be a lot of language around clarifying what happened in this last legislative session.
Yes, I did notice that.
That I think that's going to, it's almost disappointing that there's so much focus given to sort of fixing what didn't go well versus actually pushing through new legislation that makes sense for students. So I would love to think that, given there's no state capital budget, that getting bonds and levies passed with a simple majority might be a higher priority, but I have a feeling there's just going to be too much conversation around the fixes. But,
That's what I suspect as well.
I would like to make a request, perhaps a Debbie, that an email be sent out to all the directors with those 3 bullet points, questions that Tracy asked, if that would be possible, since I didn't jot them down.
Oh, yes, and I rattled
As you were
them
speaking.
off.
Thank you.
And just a technical note, when you send suggestions to Tracy, do not copy other directors. It's not a meeting, it's your thoughts that Tracy will then blend in her delegated role as ledge rep.
Yes.
Thank you for that clarity.
Any questions? Okay. That brings us to our second public comment period. Dr. Cohen, are there any public comments?
There are no requests.
Okay. Then that will move us to unfinished business, and there is no unfinished business for this evening. So we will then move to new business. And I believe the revised orders, we're going to get through the first new business, adoption of Resolution 1159, presentation, public hearing, and director comments, and then take our break and come back and finish new business. So Dr. Cohen, please give us an introduction to this section.
Thank you. Tonight, you're going to hear a presentation on Resolution 1159, acquisition of property by eminent domain. You're going to receive a presentation by staff and council. The process that you follow is to, of course, ask questions if you wish to do so, being recognized by the board president to do so as is your practice. Then you'll put the action item on the floor, if you will, through a motion and a second, and then you'll open the hearing, you'll take public testimony, close the hearing, have discussion. So that's the sequence, right? And then if you need an executive session with council afterwards, you can certainly call that, and we'll go through the process of explaining why we would do that. And after that, you would then take action either way on this. So that essentially introduces the sequencing, which Mr. Gunn will go through at least twice more as he picks up this agenda item.
Thank you for that introduction, Dr. Cohn. So tonight, once again, this is the first time through for me, resolution number 1159, authorization to acquire property by eminent domain. I will do most of the presentation, and then I'll ask Jerry Lutz with Perkins Coie, our attorney, to stand up and cover the final part of the presentation. And then at that point, you would open the hearing and ask for public comments. I believe that there are some people representing the owners here tonight. And then you would close the hearing and proceed with the with consideration of the resolution. We always put the strategic links in there, and it has to do clearly with long-term planning and facilities, driven by student enrollment, learning measures, and strategic priorities. I'll go right to this. The first part of my presentation just kind of emphasizes what you've heard so many times over the last 4 or 5 years. As we've been preparing for bonds in 2014, 16, and now 18, we are growing tremendously. The growth that we've seen over the last decade has been about 1,100 students, and you can see a dip in the 1970s that, as you know, was related to a downturn in Boeing's business, as well as Mukilteo School District opening up a high school. But basically, since 1950, we've been growing pretty steadily over time. We're the fastest growing district in Snohomish County. I know that we have our current enrollment numbers in for this October. We have the first through fifth day counts now, and we always go by the October 1 counts. So what we have are the first 4 or 5 days of the school enrollments. And the enrollments, as Dr. Cohn mentioned in his earlier comments, are down slightly. It looks like we will be growing from the numbers we were last year. And as you remember, we do a high, medium, and low range projection for from our consultant. That's what we get, and we tend to be right around the medium range, a little bit up and a little bit down. So we're within the normal expected range for our enrollment. We have 26 schools. This says 106 portables. I can tell you that it doesn't indicate that we added 9 over the last couple of months. We're actually at 115 portables and planning to increase every year. Within the next 10 years, we expect about 1,600 more students spread out over all 3 grade levels. And here it is shown broken down by elementary, middle, and high school. Again, we've covered this so many times with you and a number of the people in the audience that I don't really need to spend much time here, except that to say that we look out at least 10 years into the future. And what you see at the elementary level on the upper chart is reflected 3 or 4 years later at the middle school level, and then that's reflected 3 or 4 years later at the high school level. And so over time, the middle and high school lines will reflect what happens right here at the elementary level. So from 2020 onward, you're going to see just continued growth at all grade levels. The changes predicted over the next 10 years, and these are changes including the construction of the new elementary school, but not including a future high school. So if that is the scenario, then the number of portables that you see up there and the number of schools over capacity are what we will experience. I'll go right to the bottom portion of this. 38 portable classrooms will be needed at the high school level, 30 at Jackson High School. Right now, we have 17 at Jackson High School. We were 14 last year, and then we moved 3 more onto the site over the summer and in the spring. So right now, we're at 17 of that total that you'll see over time. Certainly, the additional portables that we're going to see from now on will be placed in positions on the site that are not going to be received very well by the site, either in the tennis courts to displace that function, or into the parking lots, or into the play fields. Those are the options. This slide here shows that over time we have built a new high school when the high school that was most recently built reached about 2,300. Examples of that are, we started out as a district with Everett High School being the only high school. Cascade was built when Everett High School reached just over 2,300 students. And then Jackson High School was built when Cascade's enrollment reached just over 2,300. By 2023, Jackson High School's enrollment is projected to be up over 2,400. It actually reaches the 2,300 mark in about 2021. Using our the plan that we are on currently with the idea of proposing in 2018 in February a high school, that would allow us to open a new high school in 2023. So now I'm going to get into the geography of the topic tonight. This is the south end of the district. The colored areas obviously indicate the school district's boundaries, with the red line being the exterior. Right in here is the southeastern portion of our district, the far southeastern part. The property that we're showing in red right here is the 180th Street site. It's about 30 acres, and we've added on to that about another 7 acres with some recent acquisitions there. The property that we're talking about tonight, about proceeding with acquiring potentially through eminent domain, is just north of this property, which is right here. The big, heavy black dashed line is the urban growth area, and that'll become important in a number of ways as we move into the future on this. Now, this is an aerial photograph shown with portions of this property colored. The original property that we own, that we bought in 2008, is right here, just under 30 acres. Over the last year or so, we've actually successfully concluded negotiations to purchase this property. This was known as Creekside, and then this property here, which were owned by the Vorworks. So these two properties total right now they total 37.02 acres. And the properties in question tonight, I'll just go through them in sequence, and then we'll cover them in a little bit more detail in some upcoming slides. The first property is right here. These are owned, there are actually, for tax purposes, there are 2 lots, although my understanding is from an appraisal standpoint, they're considered to be 1 lot. And that is the Giese property, owned by Leo and Marla Giese. This is labeled property number 1 right here. And then property number 2 is owned by Scott Rampton, a single gentleman. And then property number 3 is owned by 2 brothers, Bruce and Brian Gutschmidt. This is a site plan that shows in the same orientation. We've kind of played around with the orientation on this because we're used to seeing this site plan horizontal instead of vertical. But I wanted to orient it so that it was in the same orientation as the aerial photograph that you just saw. The heavy dashed line in yellow is the urban growth area. The property shown right here is the 30 acres or so that we owned previously, that we bought in 2008. And then the property up here is the area in question. So this would be where, right on the site plan. By the way, this is the site plan for the future high school right here, and then the elementary school right here. Elementary school 18 is what is funded with the 2016 bond, and the future high school is very likely going to be on a 2018 bond. So the property to the north of this yellow line are primarily used for athletic fields for the future high school, not for the elementary school. So in this area, which is would be the Giese property, that would be the future softball field, and then tennis courts and a portion of the multi-use field. And the property right in here, which would be the Ramptons and the Gutschmidts property currently, that would be a portion of the football field, track, and baseball fields. The negotiation process with the owners over time. In February 2015, we were originally contacted by, I believe it was Mrs. Vorwerk, and she indicated to us that she represented a group of property owners out there that would like to know if we would be interested in purchasing their property, and we said we definitely would be interested. We met with the That ownership group at Cedar Road Elementary School in April of 2015 provided with, to them, purchase and sale agreements, not filled in, but just our standard drafts so that they could start reading through it. We obtained from them an agreement, it's called a right of entry agreement, to allow us and our consultants to get on all their properties. And so we spent quite a bit of time and resources to produce evaluations, studies, and did walkthroughs of their property, and basically determined from a preliminary perspective that we thought that it was acquiring their properties were appropriate for our intended use for the site, for a future high school. We also hired an appraiser to produce fair market appraisals, which they did in 2015 and which we had updated in March of 2017. We made offers with actual dollar amounts filled in based on the fair market value appraisals in 2015. We urged all of the owners to retain their own appraisers, talk to their attorneys, do whatever they felt that they needed to do to respond to our offers. I would say that over time, there's not been a lot of back and forth about the proposed amounts. It's mostly been us kind of bugging them about where they were with the process. And I would say it was really only over the last 3 or 4 months that I think that they've been really, really serious about responding to our offers, other than the 2 properties that we actually successfully negotiated. And that was, again, the Creekside and the Warburg properties. They represent 4 parcels. There are 4 remaining parcels that are not yet, that haven't been yet purchased by us. And I'll make a final comment about the amounts on this before going to the next slide. We adjusted our offers upward based on updated appraised values in 2017, because we know that the market is fairly active and healthy right now, so the prices are tending to go up. So we adjusted our offers based on updated appraisals fairly recently. So this is a little chart that shows the specific properties for the Giesys, the Scott Rampton, and then the Goochment brothers, with the acreage and the site addresses, the parcel numbers, and the total acreage for all of those add up to 6.74 acres. And then this chart shows really some of the same information with the amounts offered. And I wanted to go through this with you for just a few minutes. I wanted to direct your attention first to the idea that the appraised value in a number of instances, well, what we've done when we've made the offers is to increase taking the appraised value and then added $10,000 onto that. So that's what we did with Leo and Marla Giesy. On Scott Rampton's, the amounts that we offered, you can see it's also above the appraised value. The difference with this one is that the school district's appraised value, well, I'm sorry, the note that I wanted to make in regard to this is that we have been informed, and I checked it out, that the county assessor's office actually has increased the property, the assessed value of that property, so it's higher than our offer. And so it's actually $435,100. That's the county assessor's office value. And what that would mean is there's an implication that there may be an upward adjustment if that value is held to be accurate from a property appraisal standpoint. The second one, which is footnote number 3 on the Goochment brothers' appraised values, the $375,000, that was actually the appraised value that I obtained from them. Our appraised value was actually $328,040. So we prepared our appraisal, and then they submitted to us their appraisal, and then we took that higher amount and added $10,000 to make the offer. So at this point, I'd like to ask Jerry Lutz to come up and talk with you a little bit about the eminent domain process.
Thanks, Mike. President Mason, Board, Dr. Cohn. The eminent domain process is fairly straightforward. It's the authority granted to school districts and other governmental entities from the state to acquire property needed for public purposes and public uses when you have not been able to reach a negotiated agreement with property owners. There are all sorts of valid reasons why property owners may or may not want to sell. And the idea is that, and it's been this way since the time of the king, that if push comes to shove, if public purposes require it, you can acquire the property and the court will determine how much money it's worth. The purpose of tonight's hearing is twofold. First of all, the board's decision to move forward with an eminent domain process and to select lands is granted deference by trial courts. So if you find that this property is necessary for school purposes, the trial court will grant that determination very significant deference. The second purpose of tonight's hearing is to allow property owners to present to you reasons why they don't want to sell, or why they think the project is a bad idea, or any of those objections that they might have. And it comes from a sense that if the board took action without any opportunity for any kind of public input, and then the court grants the decision of the board deference, there's no opportunity left for those objections to be stated. So this is important for both those reasons. Your opinion and your determination, if you choose to authorize eminent domain, is entitled to a lot of deference. And this is the property owner's opportunity to make objections to those determinations. If the board finds that these properties are necessary and authorizes eminent domain, the next step is for the school district to file a petition in Snohomish County Superior Court, and there will be a two-step process. The first step, the court decides whether it is in fact a public use. Athletic fields for a school complex is a public use, in my legal opinion. And then when that decision is entered by the court, then they move to the second phase of the condemnation proceeding, which is a trial in front of either a judge, or if the school district or the property owner wants it, a jury, where the fair market value or just full, fair, and just compensation, typically but not always fair market value, is determined by a jury. And again, as it notes on the slide, the court decides whether the property is necessary for the public use and purpose, but the board's selection of lands as necessary is typically granted deference. The other point here, and we talked about it in Mike's presentation, is that there can be disagreements that are not insubstantial about what property is actually worth. And so the district has secured appraisals. Its offers are being guided by those appraisals. And it's actually made offers that are slightly in excess of the appraised values in the context of a market that's otherwise rising, so that you're trying not to undershoot it. If the school district is negotiating, it is still constrained by all the rules imposed on the board, not to waste public funds, not to make gifts, not to be extravagant. So this is supposed to be a thoughtful, rigorous process where you pay full, fair, and just compensation, but not too much. That's what is supposed to happen. And if it can't be resolved through negotiation, although it usually is, either before the condemnation or after the case is filed by a settlement, then it's ultimately decided by a jury or a judge. And then the last piece that is also in the resolution that is before you is there's a separate topic called relocation assistance. And relocation assistance is a federal requirement. If you're using federal funds for an acquisition, there's a separate component of potential payments, typically for, most significantly for tenants or other occupants of property, not owners, but there are certain funds that are in there. There's an obligation to pay that if there's federal money. There's a corresponding state statute that implements this process in Washington. It's Chapter 826 RCW. If you're not using federal funds for the acquisitions, you are not obligated to pay relocation assistance, but you must officially opt out of the process. It is typical when school districts are acquiring property and not using federal funds that they opt out, and the resolution before you includes that election. Are there any questions?
Directors, do you have any questions at this time? From student representatives? I do have one question regarding if we were to move forward with eminent domain and it gets filed with the Superior Court, you said?
Correct.
What happens if settlements are made prior to the trial or the hearing? Does it just get dropped, or what is the legal process?
Typically what happens at that point, and this is going to sound a funny way to say it, but the court effectively becomes the escrow agent. And although you can do it other ways, the typical process would be for the district to deposit money into court in the amount of the full settlement. And then the money is dispersed by the court first to, for example, a bank that has a deed of trust on the property, and then so pay off the liens, pay off taxes that may be owed, and then the net difference gets dispersed to the property owner.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So at this point, I would just propose that the board continue with the, in the procedure as shown in the order, and which would lead to a motion at this point.
Okay, thank you very much, both, for your presentation. At this time, I will entertain a motion to approve Resolution 1159, authorization to acquire property by eminent domain.
So move.
Is there a second to the motion to approve Resolution 1159?
Second.
It has been moved by Director Lassane and seconded by Director Mitchell. To approve Resolution 1159, authorization to acquire property by eminent domain. In accordance with RCW 8.25.290, a public hearing on the proposed resolution is hereby opened. During this public hearing, the board invites and will allow only property owners and tenants of the specific properties involved in this hearing, and those with legal interest in the properties to provide testimony during this public hearing. Dr. Cohen, are there any requests to provide public comment on the resolution?
Yes, there are.
Will you please call the speakers?
I will. First speaker is Bruce Gutschmidt.
Thank you. My name's Bruce Gutschmidt. I'm one of the property owners on 174th Street. I had a couple of questions when I was watching the slideshow. It looked like the UGA boundary had been moved. I don't know if that's current or not, what they showed on the map, because What I get from the county website is that my property is inside the UGA, and it's part of the urban growth process, and was scheduled to be rezoned at some point to R7200. If that did happen, we would have effectively 16 lots worth in the ballpark of 250,000 each to a developer. The last offer we had on the property was 1.6 million. That was in 2008, I want to say, just before Obama got in office and the market tanked. So that was quite a while ago, but it's coming back up to that point. And of course, nobody's going to be interested in it now that they're doing this process. My next question was, I noticed that the Vorick property, which was under 4 acres, sold for 1.22 million. That works out to about 400,000 an acre. And the offer that they reflected for us was just over 200,000 an acre. Now, I didn't see any big differences in the property, but that's a huge difference in price for what they're offering. And as one of the property owners, I understand that you guys need to build a new school. I have no problem moving on. The problem is taking way less than the property's worth, which is not enough for me to even relocate in the area. The houses down the street for me on a 7,200 square foot lot, granted they're brand new houses, are selling in the $750,000 range on a 7,200 square foot lot. We have almost 2 acres. That's like 16 lots. So I know the zoning is a little different, so they're gonna come in at different values, but the property the school district has already acquired, they're paying a lot more per acre than they're offering us. And we haven't quit negotiating with them. So I think this process is premature. That's my opinion. Does anybody have a question for me while I'm here? That's all I have. Thank you for listening. And I appreciate you guys being on the board here. You guys do a great job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Scott Rampton.
Hi, I'm Scott Rampton. I'm one of the other people involved in this the main process. I've actually lived there about 24 years. Bruce has been my neighbor. I knew his dad. I think there's a lot of emotion here that probably people don't understand unless they're in this process. And I understand the need for a new school. It's just hard to leave your home after 24 years. And I really do agree with Bruce. I don't think we'll be able to relocate for probably the money that right now is on the table in the close area. We'd probably have to move quite a bit further to get something that we're used to, comparable, maybe an acre or something like that. A little bit more in the history. We all have been in the process and working with the school a little bit to see what the offers were. I think a lot of that started because some of the local developers were making some pretty big offers to some of the landowners there because there was a thought that the zoning would be changing. I wasn't really involved in that. I only have 1 acre. I was kind of like the last person they're going to talk to once they swooped on the big pieces. But I heard about it. I know my neighbors. I've known them for years. And really what instigated us getting a hold of the district back in 2015 was the Van Works. They really wanted to move. And they'd already purchased property over in somewhere else. And they subsequently had renters come in and been living in all their houses. So they weren't really living there, and they ended up going back after we all decided not to take the offers. And I think for me, it was a little bit more of an idea to see what the land might be worth or what my property might be worth at the time. Well, after we didn't take it, Van went back and renegotiated with the district, and they ended up selling. But by that time, he was renting. The houses were in pretty bad repair. They'd had people there. I'm not even sure if they were paying rent. The other person that sold, it was actually a developer. They bought the land just to turn it over. Again, they were renting it. So the 3 property owners that are still left, we're all been there a long time, and it's just been really I think, hard. The other piece, too, is until this July, this was the first time eminent domain was ever really brought up formally in a letter and said, you're being served. So I think the other offers, it was like, okay, that's either at or below what the county tax assessment was. I never took it too seriously. I was like, okay, I always thought I could get more money if I just sold it outright anyway. I realize that we're still going to probably discuss the money in the future and try to come to terms with what agreement we might be able to reach before ever getting to the court. It's just in this market, it's so hard to make that assessment on what that fair price is. And if we don't settle on a price for a year, well, that could be another $100,000 to the property owners, and that's our next seed money for our next place. So I don't know. I guess if there's any way we can prolong, and it didn't sound like the ball fields were actually in the plan to be built for some time. I guess I would ask the board to really consider pretty seriously if we could delay until it's really necessary to come in and have to leave our land. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for your comments.
And now Marla Giese.
Thank you. I'm Marla Giese, and I pretty much echo everything that's already been said, so I don't want to waste time repeating that. I would just really impress on Scott's ask is, could we have just a little bit more time? I mean, we weren't really told it was going to be go to eminent domain until just recently, and I think that was just kind of a shock for us and didn't give us a lot of time. And we're told that we can continue to negotiate while we go through the eminent domain process. But I feel that really ties our hands as property owners, limits our ability to do the research and work we want to do, to effectively determine the appropriate price for our property. I'd also say I think it's quite sad, and I am certainly not an attorney, but they just built all these new houses right up to my property that are selling, as Scott said, for $600,000 to $700,000 a home. And we can't even move next door for the price we're being offered for our property. And we can't move anywhere else in the community either, because most of it is either the new developments or it's slated for future development. And the prices are just astronomical. So we're gonna have to move outside the community in which we're all connected with. And I really struggle with that as an option. I'm really happy with my community and I'm active in my community. My commute works for me, and as we all know, that's kind of a big issue these days with traffic the way it is. I get to have horses where I live near the Mill Creek area. I mean, isn't that something? So it's a little slice of heaven, if you will. And I think we all kind of feel that way as being the three remaining that still live there in our homes. So again, I understand progress, and I certainly want to support it. But we also did all receive these offers from developers that were, in my case, over $2 million. And the offer I have now is from the school is less than that, significantly less than that. And I get, that might not be worth it today, but I kind of feel like you're still in my retirement. That was our plan, is we just wait for this to go to development. They've built right up to us. We're in the RUTA. We're next up for development, supposedly, and if it takes 10 or 15 years, we're okay with that. And if you take that now, it just feels like you're really stealing from us, and I don't want to feel that way. I really want it to be, a mutually acceptable agreement. I mean, I think I don't want to have a bad taste in my mouth over that. And so I just think that we could do some more work here to mitigate the challenges with you taking our property. And I'm also challenged that you feel like you need to take it now, as my understanding is that you don't have the money yet, that, you have to apply through a levy or bond, and you're going to do that in the future, but you don't have it yet. And so why do I have to move from my home when you don't even have the money yet? And it makes me nervous because I know of some other property that Everett School District owns. They took it over 20, 25 years ago, and it's still vacant land. And I just don't feel you should take property and not use it. I don't think that's right. And I would just hope that we could work through this in a more mutually acceptable arrangement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That it for comments? Okay. With no further comments, the public hearing on Resolution 1159, authorization to acquire property by eminent domain, is hereby closed. Board comments are now invited on the motion before us. Directors, do you have any comments?
Is it possible that we can have Mr. Gunn go over a timeline as to the reasoning why we're going through the process now, and when we anticipate the building of the elementary school and how all of that might be affected, and the reasons why we're doing this now?
Absolutely.
If you're prepared to do that, that would be great. That was my question.
Sure, I can make a few comments. The first thing is Elementary 18 is fully funded by the 2016 bond. We've applied for numerous permits already. The access road from the site, to 174th will go through the property that we have already purchased from the Vorworks, up to 174th. So that will be going out to bid in the late winter, and construction for that should start this spring. One of the, and in terms of the timeline for the high school, we plan to move as quickly as we can through the design and permitting process for that high school. And so right now we are currently out for architects selections for that project. We should be bringing you a recommendation in we hope later this month, but if not, then early October for that. They will start design right away, and the timing for the first action on that in terms of a permit activity is that by May of 2018, we need to apply for what's called pre-concurrency, which is the process to get approval from the county for the traffic that will be generated by our project. And that's the first in a long series of various permits and deadlines. Our understanding is that we have to have ownership of all of those properties by then in order to apply for that permit in May of 18. And the eminent domain process that we're beginning, and admittedly we have held off as long as we could on this in order to not delay our high school project. That's why it's only been in the last few months that we've really started talking about eminent domain and the urgency of this acquisition.
And can you tell me again what the timeline is for eminent domain in terms of months?
About 8 months. If it all, I understand it can happen a lot quicker than that, could be 4 months. My understanding is an outside, general time parameter is around 8 months.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think this is the hardest thing a school district has to do. And I appreciate everything that I heard today. And I think I'm feeling some of the emotion. I do hope that through this process that we can, again, come up with a mutually acceptable as close to that. I do live down there in that community. I do see those house prices. I do see the small lot sizes compared to this acreage. I also accidentally saw 22,000 students standing in a hallway at Jackson High School the other day when I went in the wrong door, and that school cannot support that many students. And with oncoming portables, it just can't support it, that there's not enough places for students to sit and things. So there is urgency. And I struggle with this.
I also struggle with the fact that, for someone who has lived in an area for all their, such a long time, to have their property go through the eminent domain process is very disheartening. I realize that, when you can see houses next door, being sold for such large values, it's amazing. It's a challenge. And I also see that, our schools in the South End are becoming overcrowded, and we do need to build a new school. That is very vital, and that is important. But I also see the struggles that these three families face. And it's a challenge. And we will continue, I know Mike will continue with working with them to get through this process. And it's very difficult. I do understand how difficult it is. But we do need a new school.
Any comments, Director Andrews?
Can you run through again the restrictions on what the school district can pay for a property, the restrictions put forth by state law?
Sure.
In general, if you ask the Attorney General's office, they will say you can pay fair market value and nothing more. The reality of that is once you're in litigation, there are also litigation costs and litigation risk that give the school district more flexibility in responding to counteroffers from property owners. It is still to be guided by the appraisal process, and in my own view, you have to have a legitimate, fact-based appraisal from the condomnees in order to justify a higher price. The condomnees are also entitled to testify as to their own personal opinion of value, which can sometimes be very persuasive to a jury. But that's the general parameters. So once you're in litigation, you have authority to settle within the range, but essentially the range between your appraisal and the appraisal that's obtained by the condomnees representatives.
Paul? Okay. Before proceeding to the vote, I too would like to just make a few comments. I do concur with my fellow directors that this is not an easy thing. When I look at the facts that, and the directors have studied this at some length. We've been apprised of these negotiations for a couple years now, actually. And the situations that would, or scenarios, I should say, that I feel would help correct some of the inadequacies or situations that you brought to the table tonight, I believe aren't going to happen in the time frame that we need to build a new high school. Our current South End High School was built for about 1,500, and this year we have 2,400 students there. 2,200 students there. We just have too many people, and it's those neighbors next to you, all those neighbors that have come. And unfortunately, it is the development in the Mill Creek area that is driving the need for the high school and putting us in this position. And it's not one that any one of us wants to be in, but we have to also do our job, which is to make sure that our district is able to provide a great education for all the students that come. We don't turn anyone away. So I appreciate and thank you all for coming tonight and sharing your stories and making comment to us. Okay. There being no further discussion on the motion to approve Resolution 1159, we will proceed to the vote. All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed to the motion say no. All abstaining from action on the motion say I abstain and provide a reason for the abstention, please. Okay. The motion to approve Resolution 1159, authorization to acquire property by eminent domain, is carried. Okay. And with that, I believe we have a 10-minute break, so we will recess until 6:33. Thank you. September 12th, 2017, Everett Public School Board of Directors regular meeting. I would like to start by welcoming our new student representative to her first meeting tonight. Welcome, Hunter. We look forward to having you on board, and I'm sure Druvik is going to be able, as our senior, well, in more ways than one, board representative, offer some probably great advice along the way. So with that, sorry. Darn it. With that, we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the secretary please call the roll?
President Mason,
Present.
Vice President Andrews,
Present.
Director Lassane,
Present?
Director Mitchell,
Present.
Director Wenta, Student Representative Parikh,
Present.
Student Representative Pollock.
Present.
Thank you. That takes us to the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Cohen, would you please introduce tonight's agenda?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Consistent with the plans established at your 2017 Summer Planning Workshop, tonight's agenda contains several elements related to both the district's strategic plan and the board's annual goals. There's a segment for routine business this evening. There is a segment for strategic progress reporting, a segment for information items, one for new business, one for upcoming agenda items, and a segment for board comments. In addition, I have a special note for this evening's meeting. Tonight, the school board will hold a public hearing to receive testimony and consider whether to authorize eminent domain proceedings to acquire real property for a future high school. During this public hearing, the board invites and will
I don't know how much she'll drive.
I don't have a quorum yet, sorry. Okay, I think we're going to get going here again. We have just a few more items, not a particularly long meeting tonight. And I believe up next is Mr. Fleckenstein with a couple policy reviews and revisions.
He is, but the first one is going to be mine. It's,
Okay,
let me turn my computer back on.
sorry, maybe I should have done that.
Item 13.2 is policy 1441, audience participation. It is on your agenda so that you can adjust your regular order of business based on the work you did at your workshop. You decided to change a number of the pieces of the order and to blend the two audience comment sections into one. A few years ago, you tried expanding to two in order to give people multiple opportunities. And what you've observed over the past 2 years is that people do not use the second one, and that you are more typically likely to expand the first one when folks come in. So you're combining them again, like they used to be, and then eventually you're moving the director comments up and taking superintendent comments out of that second group. So you're eliminating that, basically streamlining the agenda a little bit so as not to take as much time to be able to better plan your meetings and carry them out. This policy has a note that says 2 public comment items rather than 1. You need to change it back to 1, so this is your first reading to do that. If you agree to move it to second reading next month, it will be in your consent agenda along with the change in your regular order of business, which would then take effect the first meeting in October.
Correct.
Okay.
Directors, do you have any questions regarding that policy? Okay, then we will move revisions to policy 1441 to second reading. And now I believe we have Mr. Fleckenstein with us to review policy 3416, medication at school, proposed revision.
Well, good evening. The proposed revisions to policy 3416, medication at school, are provided for the board's consideration this evening in response to the passage of substitute Senate Bill 5404, also known as the Student Sun Safety Education Act, that passed in the 2017 legislative session. Prior to the passage of this act, its related RCW 28A 210-260 did not make clear the distinction between prescription and non-prescription medication. And later in 2015, OSPI further interpreted this law to categorize sunscreen as an FDA-regulated medication, requiring a licensed healthcare provider's medical order for administration at school. Upon adoption of the Student Sun Safety Education Act in June this year, sunscreen products that are regulated by the FDA for over-the-counter use are now exempt from the statute and may be administered at school without a licensed healthcare provider's medical order. Proposed revisions to policy 3416, medication at school, has been reviewed by legal counsel and the superintendent's cabinet prior to tonight's meeting.
Directors, do you have any questions or comments? Student representatives? Okay, we will.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I have one thing. sorry, as a pharmacist, that was ridiculous. But second, as a pharmacist, also, there are prescription, non-prescription, which are over-the-counter, and herbal or supplements. Herbal or supplements are not regulated by the FDA. A lot of people do take herbals and supplements. Are those, is that in a separate policy, or are they part of this? Vitamin C, zinc, melatonin, all those things are not regulated by the FDA, but also not considered non-prescription, over-the-counter. So I'm just wondering, how does WASDA mention that at all?
I think what would be, to answer your question,
Okay.
the related procedure
Okay.
to this policy
Okay.
outlines the use and possession of over-the-counter daily dose of students for non-prescribed over-the-counter medication.
Okay, so it just makes it a big group. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll move that to
Glad we
second
got by with
reading.
that one.
Sorry.
Had us worried there.
Sun
Okay.
safety is important.
Actually, before we move on, I do have a question that kind of popped into my head. Is there any concern or mention, a lot of sunscreen now comes in those aerosol cans. Is that any kind of hazard, or did anyone address kids having aerosol cans at school?
I think it's
Just 'cause
important to
they're so
make-
creative sometimes.
It's a very good question. I think it's important to make a distinction between appropriate use of sunscreen at school for administering on yourself versus inappropriate use of an aerosol to create a disruptive environment.
Okay. I was just curious if that was ever discussed or addressed.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we're done with this policy. Let's move on to our next one. Policy 6925, selection of the architect.
Yeah, the proposed revisions to policy 6925 for the board's consideration tonight would expand the definition of architectural and engineering services within the policy and its related procedure to have the same meaning as it is defined in RCW 3980.020, and would now include services or activities within the scope of professional practice for architects, engineers, land surveyors, and landscape architects. In addition, the proposed revisions to this policy would provide the superintendent the authority, as delegated by the board, to approve the selection of consultants for architectural and engineering services for construction projects expected to cost less than $2 million. For construction projects, the district the district expects to cost more than $2 million. The selection of consultants for architectural and engineering services shall still be subject to board approval upon recommendation by the superintendent. The revision of this policy's title is also proposed to become Selection of Architects and Engineers from its current title. This particular policy has been reviewed by legal counsel and the superintendent's cabinet prior to tonight's meeting.
Thank you. I appreciate you taking on these policies that are in need of updating. Directors, do you have any questions or comments?
Is the $2 million, is that prescribed in the RCW, or how did we come to $2 million?
That's a very good question, and I know Mike Gunn's prepared to explain that dollar amount to you.
It is not, the $2 million is not prescribed in the RCW. The current board policy states a threshold of a 5,000 square foot building. And what we wanted to do is to rephrase that in more certain terms and specify a dollar amount instead of a building size.
So if this was to include, like, for example, the athletic fields replacement of, turf, would that fall under this situation too?
Yes. What we would do is determine what the anticipated cost of the project was, and if it was over $2 million, we would be bringing the architect and consultant selections to you for approval. And if it were under the $2 million, the superintendent would be developing the process to select those consultants. In any event, and at least once a year, we would provide you with a list of all of the consultants selected under this policy.
And the $2 million threshold is approved budgeted items. So it's only for the selection of the architect on a project that's smaller than that. It's not approval of spending money. We're not delegating the funds. We're
Correct.
only delegating the approval of an architect.
That's right. The budget process gives the district staff, the superintendent, the ability to spend the money.
Who would make the determination of a particular requirement for, like, engineering requirements for a project? Because even if it were under $2 million, there may be a lot of engineering that has to be taking place for that. So there's no ramification as to the scope, just the cost?
Correct. See, in the past, it was the other way around. It was
The scope.
the size and not the complexity or the cost. So we ran into a situation here where we were about a month ago wanting to select an architect, and we read this policy. We talked to our attorneys, and they said, yeah, this is confusing. You should clarify this. And this is how they suggested that we provide more
proceed.
clarity in the process.
Would it not be not just $2 million, but I'm concerned about the complexity of it, because some jobs may be less than $2 million, but the scope might, and the complexity of the item might require some engineering to go into it.
Oh, all of these projects would likely require engineering that would go
Okay.
into it.
Okay.
So we would use this policy to select engineers as well as architects, landscape architects, and land surveyors.
Okay.
So all of those consultants would be selected using this policy with this change.
Okay. I got you. So it
The
would be.
the driver around whether or not you engage an engineer is based on the project, and architects are going to make sure that there's appropriate engineering so that they're not liable.
Yes, exactly. That's the concern that I have, the liability. If we approve a project or don't approve a project because the superintendent's approving the project, not the board.
No, that's not,
That's not
it's
what
about the
this is.
selection of the architect for the
Just the
project.
selection.
Not the project.
Okay, not the project, but the selection of the architect. Okay, got it.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? And we'll go ahead and move this one to second reading as well. Thank you very much. Okay, that brings us to board superintendent comments, and,
Or upcoming agenda items.
oh, let's do that first.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dr. Cohn. What are
Item
our upcoming
14.1 is
agenda items?
an upcoming agenda item. It's a special meeting, September 19. It's your student performance and EES trends review. Greg Lobdell with the Center for Education Effectiveness will be here to conduct that session with you. That is a study session, not a work session, and it will be packed. Item 14.2 is your next regular meeting. We expect to present you student achievement report, subgroups and equity targets. That's an internally generated versus an externally generated presentation. Then you'll have second reading on policies 1441, 3416, 6925, and we'll bring you first reading on 2410, which is the high school graduation requirements. And there could be some more policies because Mr. Fleckenstein is generating them like a salad spinner throws off water. General operating business will include things like your impress accounts, your cancellation of warrants. I think the ECAP contract, the Jackson Fund Board, and we're not sure about the schools of distinction process being ripe for presentation of schools to you, but we're pretty sure that we're going to be able to present you a new administrator. That would be the plan for your next regular meeting.
Excellent, thank you. And with that, we come to board superintendent comments. And because Student Representative Pollock is new at the meetings, I just wanted to explain how this part of the meeting works. What we typically do is take a couple minutes each, and it's not a requirement at all, but student representatives and directors like to report out on, it's our opportunity to share our activities or our observations or comment on a presentation or kind of whatever you want to say about what is happening in the district, and often student representatives use the opportunity to talk about some things happening at their school and such. And so tonight, I'm going to start at this end and give you the opportunity to think about it, and certainly no requirement to make a comment if you don't have any. So, Juvik, you want to get us started?
Sure. So first off, it's good to be back, both back here with the board and also back home. I spent the majority of my summer out east in Boston for an internship, and so only got back a few weeks ago, and really kind of got thrown into the swing of things with summer homework and first day of school coming right up, and so this year, like senior year, it's probably been my most unusual start to a school year, probably because I'm not playing tennis this year, which is sad and I miss it, but it was a choice I had to make because with all my course load and with college and scholarship apps coming up, I thought I might need some more time to work on that. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this school year, especially with getting my college apps out of the way. Yeah, looking forward to working with the board again.
Great, thank you. I have to say, having gone through the college application process as a parent last fall, I don't miss it. So I'm sure you'll survive. Director Lassane.
Yes, I'd like to say it is a pleasure being back on the board after new school year. It's a wonder that we had such a great summer, so that means we'll have a great winter and fall with school in a great school year. So I'm just looking forward. I'm being very optimistic and looking forward to it. It was an extreme pleasure to be present there at Everett High School this morning when we did the rollout of the technology computers to our students, to see their faces and see the smiles that this is mine and this is mine now. And boy, they were able to go through, they had a process when they rolled them out with their teachers, or rather with a tech, going over how to use the machine. And the kids are just, they were right there. They knew what they were doing. It was just, it's going to be nice. It's going to be nice. It is an extreme pleasure to say that we are moving to where we are leveling the playing field for each one of our students by rolling out a computer for each one of our students. And I look forward to when the families can say, this has been a godsend. I really appreciate them coming home with their computers and being tech savvy. So we just have to hope their parents can get on board as well with technology. And I'm looking forward to Sequoia getting their one-to-one. So this is a great year. I'm looking forward to things that are coming up. Great year.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if Druvik can expand on your internship during the summer. I'm just curious to hear about that.
Yeah, sure. So I was sorry. So I was interning at a chemical engineering laboratory at MIT, and so I was there as part of a research summer program that's funded by the DoD, Department of Defense. And so it was a free program. I got to stay there for 6 weeks with 80 other kids from around the world, and yeah, it was a great experience. Both the research aspect, it was interesting work, and I got to work with a lot of cool people, and also meeting all the other kids from all these different countries and other states, and so yeah, it was a great experience.
How did you learn of that opportunity?
Yeah, how did you learn about this?
So I was actually told by someone who had done it a couple years ago. One of my friends from another state, and so yeah, I just went out. I applied last January, and I had got in, and so yeah.
Did anybody else from Jackson or any other students from Everett Public Schools go?
There were no other students from Everett, but there was one other girl from Washington who goes to Tesla STEM High School in the Lake Washington School District.
Well, congratulations. What an
Very cool.
Very
opportunity.
cool.
That's wonderful.
Good opportunity. Take notes and pass it along to the next class.
Get a security clearance?
Not quite, no.
Great work.
It is exciting to see school starting. The traffic has picked up exponentially. It's so amazing.
That's right, you're right.
yeah.
Next to the.
But very exciting, and I'm inspired when I see all those children and students walking to school every day, and they look very excited too. I have written on my notepad, quote, like a salad spinner throws off water. Going to use that one, thank you.
You're welcome.
Director Mitchell.
Well, I had this figured out. I too am glad school has started. I too am glad our computers are rolling out. Jackson is still a ways away, so you will not partake of it. But you are definitely smarter than I was in high school. And I'm proud of that for so many of our kids that are just so much smart differently than I was in high school. But I just want to say that a couple Saturdays ago, in the Les Schwab parking lot, I saw Mark Harmsworth, Representative Mark Harmsworth. And I said, so Mark, you guys got some work to do on that school funding. And he goes, well, what about it? You talking McCleary? And I said, yeah, kind of. And he goes, what about it? And I said, well, Bellevue's getting 20 million? More than us. So we've got an equity problem. And he goes, there's going to be a lot of amendments in the fall. And I said, so will you open up the funding? And he goes, well, there'll be a lot of amendments and we'll see what's going to happen. I said, so you're going to have a really long session next year, huh? And he walked away from me. So I just want everyone to know that one thing that we talked about during our board retreat is that we are always board members when we're out in the community. And I definitely took advantage of that when I saw my representative, because I live in the 44th, to have a very frank conversation with him about what our expectations are for funding for students in Everett. And I am very proud that we have that opportunity to speak with our representatives. And I look forward to the Legislative Assembly in two weekends from now. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Hunter, would you like to say anything?
I would like to say that I'm very grateful to be here. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to represent Sequoia High School because it's a very great school, and I would like to have students there have their voice heard through me. And I'm very happy for the school year to start. I miss the schedule and routine of having everything done. And congrats on the MIT thing. That's about it for me.
Great, thank you. I just had a couple things I wanted to say. First of all, we actually had our annual planning workshop since the last board meeting. It seems like a while ago, but I just wanted to thank my fellow directors for your participation. I feel like every year we get better at this. We are having conversations that we didn't have 2 and definitely not 3 years ago when we were deer in the headlights, a couple of us. So it's just fun to see how we're evolving and growing and changing and becoming better at what we do, and then having the opportunity to spend 2 days at talking about how we want to continue to do that. And then I also had the opportunity to attend the Governor's Aerospace Summit, and although it was not focused on education, it was a really great learning opportunity for me as a director to learn about the aerospace industry, since it's so formative for our students and our graduates in terms of the type of jobs that are going to be out there, what the economy looks like, and a little bit of the jobs that we need to continue to think about and the ways that we can prepare our students to enter into that industry. And this isn't just Boeing, this is the whole aerospace industry. And it's huge and it's significant. And so it was very interesting and applicable learning opportunity for me, despite the fact that it was not specific to education. And then finally, this morning, I had the opportunity to be at Everett High School. And I have to say to Brian Beckley and his team, you guys did an amazing job. It was incredibly calm, and if there was chaos going on, they didn't let it show. But the words that I wrote down, professional, focused, and flexible. It was great. I was in the room when Joanne, Budewick was going through the training, and she asked the kids if there's any questions, and one said, raised their hands and said, well, I see that the Xbox app is on our on one of the options. Is it okay to use that? And I think that caught her off a little bit by surprise because Microsoft kind of added it in there, and I'm not sure it was supposed to be in there, but of course she just rolls right with it about being flexible and probably not a good use of computer technology or of school technology, and if you have one at home, it's probably going to work better anyhow. But I love that. The kids always have an opportunity to throw you off if whenever you're doing something like that. So a lot of learning to do. It's going to be an interesting, probably a little bit of a crazy year, but your team was just amazing. I just want to say, please make sure to say thank you to them. I mean, they probably know they've been working pretty hard, so I don't need to tell them that, but thank you. And it's still board superintendent comments. If Dr. Cohn, you have anything to add.
And it is indeed. I think I said most, if not all of my piece, but I want to refer a little bit to Debbie. Debbie and Darlene, we finally bit the bullet and shipped them off to board docs training, which we haven't done for several years as much as we wanted to. I think they holed up somewhere in the desert in Nevada where they couldn't do anything else but play with board docs. She had some really interesting comments about what's coming, so I thought she might want to tell you a little bit about that in 57 seconds.
Well, they're going to update the board docs platform, so you'll see some changes. There'll be an email that they'll be sending out that I'll forward to you, and perhaps you'll receive it anyway. So the look will be different, and that's coming toward the end of the month. We learned a lot of new tips and had some fun as well, and sure what else right
I have
now.
a question. Is there an app, a board docs app, that you can put on your phone and hit the app and it pulls up?
Or a way you can view it on your phone and not have it go all wonky?
Actually, that was one of the things that you told me they were going to do.
They were talking about it, but I don't know how soon that'll be available, so let me find out.
Yeah, because if you're looking at it on your phone and you touch the right-hand side, it...
Yeah. And I think on my iPad, having an app versus going into Safari and then pulling it up under a tab. And I mean, I know there's easier ways to do it, but it's...
Well, let me find out for you.
Did they talk anything about searching, so you can search on a better search engine for them to find information?
They talked about how to do that, but it hasn't really changed, and I can certainly give you some tips on how to do that.
Okay.
You might need a few tips on that. Every time I search, I get just a very interesting mix of non-relevant information.
Yeah.
Let me put something together for you guys.
Yeah, I would love to learn
That
to
also could have
search
to do with
better.
what files are named.
Maybe.
Because when you search, you get everything else, and you.
Well, and it gives you old dates first, rather than it doesn't order it, which drives me crazy with the newer stuff versus whatever.
Exactly.
But, okay.
I agree.
Have a great time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Anything else?
No.
Okay. I guess with that, this concludes the September 12th, 2017 Everett Public School Board of Directors regular meeting. We are adjourned.
Thank you.